Welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to show you magic mix bus compression settings for your metal mix. But before we get started, if you'd like for me to mix your music, shoot me an email at divinemotherstudios@gmail.com with details of your project. I'd love to work with you guys. So this video is a follow-up to the video that I made called Why Sidechaining is Dumb. You know, a lot of people didn't understand the point I was trying to make here. This video is the response to that, so just to clarify some things. Now, we're all searching for glue in our mixes, and the way you achieve glue in your mixes is with mix bus compression. And the glue effect that a lot of people are looking for is typically found with an SSL style mix bus compressor or any other style of VCA compression, but typically it's going to be an SSL compressor. And then you're going to use a slow attack and either a very fast release or an auto release. That is where the glue comes in. And essentially that is unchanged for the better part of the however long the SSL console has been around. I know many engineers that haven't changed their settings in over 10 years, 20 years, etc. I myself barely even touch my settings on my mix bus compressor the last couple years that I've been mixing. All right, so I got my song pulled up here. This is a song I mixed for a client a couple months back, and let's just hear how it sounds with the mix bus processing. I think this should get the point across. It's a really mellow song and very heavy and doom-like. So it's the perfect example for me to show you guys what I'm talking about here. All right, now let me explain to you guys how mix bus compression works to get the glue effect. So you have elements of your mix, and I want you to think of a rubber band wrapped around those elements of the mix that stretches and then contracts. As you stretch more, the more it's going to want to contract and return back to normal. And that is the same way mix bus compression works. It's not a hard ceiling on your mix. It's a movable ceiling that is elastic, that bends and contracts with the movement of your mix. And the way you set up your bus compression really affects the elasticity of that rubber band ceiling on your mix. Now, the rubber band is going to always want to contract and return back to normal. And by doing so, as you push more elements into the mix, it's going to expand, but at the same time kind of start squeezing it. So it has expansion and then it squeezes. And what it does is that it brings those elements of the mix closer together while still being able to expand. And that's how you get the glue effect. So I think the term glue is a bit of an accuracy. I get why it's used, but I really like the rubber band analogy. And that's something that I learned from Jordan Valeriat in his explanation of it. And I think it fits perfectly for what we're explaining here. So again, we have this rubber band that is the ceiling of our mix. And then as you're adding more elements during your mix process to your mix bus, that rubber band is being able to be expanded. But as it's expanding, it's also tightening. So as it tightens, it's going to bring those elements closer together, and that's where you get that glue effect. Another way to think about it is that if you have peaks and valleys in your mix, it's going to squeeze those closer together so that there's less disparity between those peaks. And because of the nature of the way low end works, it's also going to be able to contain low end and control it a lot better than if it wasn't being compressed as a whole across the entirety of the mix. All right, so here is my mix bus compressor. Obviously, it's the SSL channel. It is the SSL bus compressor 2 from SSL directly themselves. And let me just show you by turning this off what the mix sounds like without any mix bus compression. Now, what I heard was that the drums got a little bit louder. The vocals kind of started floating above everything else. The guitars kind of dropped off on the sides. And then a lot of the more piano elements and synth elements were pushed a little bit farther back. And everything just sounded a little bit more separated. I'm going to go ahead and pop this back in. And I want you guys to see how the drums actually get squeezed. And then I want I want you guys to pay attention to how the guitars get wrapped around the drums, and then the vocals just get pushed back down so that they're just floating above everything else. And then the background elements, like the piano and all the synthesizers, they get pushed up just a little bit. So again, there's that rubber band effect. No rubber band, you have these elements that are spread out, and then you have the rubber band implemented, and then those elements get kind of pushed closer together. So let's go ahead and take a listen now that I have my mix bus compressor engaged. I really hope you guys were able to hear that. I highly suggest that you start your mix with a bus compressor going from the onset. Once you kind of created your static mix with panning and volume faders. Now, let me just quickly go over attack and release and ratio settings here. So I have a 30 millisecond attack with an auto release. The only thing that really ever changes on my mix bus compressor is the release setting. I pretty much always use a 30 millisecond attack, and it's always going to oscillate between an auto release or the fastest release, which is, I believe, 0.1, which would be all the way on this side right here. The reason for that is dependent on the type of music that I'm mixing that day. So if I'm mixing really fast, like death metal or technical death metal, I'm going to use a very fast release, because that's going to allow the punch to be even more emphasized. And that type of music, you really want your mixes to be really, really punchy. But as this is a much slower song, I still want that punch, but I do want that smoothing effect that you get from the auto release setting. Now, the attack is how you're going to control the presentation of the transients in your mix. Obviously, the faster the attack, the more you're going to stifle the transients. The slower the attack, the more you're going to allow those transients to be let through the compressor. And for metal, you do really want those transient information to be as present as possible. Metal is supposed to sound big and punchy. And again, really, I never change the setting between 30 milliseconds. Maybe once in a blue moon, I'll switch it to 10 milliseconds if I find that there's some snare peaks that are getting a little too out of control. But 99% of the time, I am going to be sticking to a 30 millisecond attack. As far as ratio is concerned, I use a very gentle ratio, which is a 2:1. If I feel that I need to get more extreme compression, I'll switch it up to 4:1. And that's pretty much it. I hardly ever change the settings across my mix bus compression. So once I just set up my static mix with my panning and my volume faders, I pop this bad boy on, and then I get right to EQ and compression for all the other elements of the mix, adding more volume as I go, and then adjusting the threshold so that I'm always sitting around 2 to 3 dB of compression. Let's just take one final listen to the mix. I am going to A/B the compressor for you guys, and just pay attention to the low end, the transient information, and just how the guitars start to wrap around the center of the mix. So I really hope that made it very obvious that when it was on, a lot of the elements got pushed closer together, giving you that glue effect that we're all searching for in our metal mixes. But when I turned it off, things got a little bit more separated. The bass got a little bit more unruly. The drum transients started getting above where they needed to be, and the vocals started to be way up here, far above the mix when they needed to be a little bit closer to the bottom. And going back to my previous video where I said sidechaining is dumb, the reason I said it was dumb is because you completely negate the gluing effect by using your internal sidechain filter. Do not use your internal sidechain filter if you want to have the glue effect.